Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So years ago, I used to live at a Korean Zen temple in the Toronto area. And I ate a lot of kimchi, that was one thing. But another thing was that they had actually an impressive emphasis on meditation. So at the time, I was looking for a place to meditate. I was a young man, but none of the Theravada temples that I was able to see had meditation programs. Now, many of them do. So I went there, and the teacher was very, very kind of strict and very direct. And one of the teachings that he gave was this teaching about dogs and tigers. So he said, he'd give this teaching very often. He'd say, if you throw rocks at a dog, it runs after the rocks. And he says, if you throw rocks at a tiger, it runs after whoever's throwing the rocks. So the point there that he was trying to make was that in a person's meditation, they should go straight for the source of what it is that's causing them to suffer, and look straight to the source of what it is that's causing them to be happy. Now, we can look at this source in many different ways, but one way that can be practical is to break it up into both the body and the mind. Oftentimes, the body's actually overlooked in terms of its role in causing us happiness, causing us suffering. And the mind is given emphasis. But our role in shaping our reality is sometimes not emphasized enough. So what you sometimes find when people approach meditation is that they go to meditate and they're looking for a particular experience or set of experiences in order to validate that they're on the right path, in order to show them that they're progressing well, and in order to give them some confidence that this path is working. So it could be something like they look for a light. I kind of want to see a light in their meditation. Some people see them. That's all right. It could be that they want to have some particular experience with seeing moments appear almost like they're a camera shutter, and this is a particular experience. It could be that they want the whole world to disappear and be enveloped in bliss. And it's not that these experiences are things that you want to avoid necessarily. It's that they have to be judged in terms of their source. So when we speak about a source, what is the source that we're looking for here? The source is our goal in our meditation, which is to train our minds to be happy. It's kind of seems like a very simple goal, but often that goal is overlooked. And if that goal gets overlooked, when that question gets put to the side, then what can happen instead is people chase after stones. They don't know that they're looking for happiness, so they may chase after a light. I want the light. Or they don't know, they're not necessarily explicit they're looking for happiness, so they may chase after the shutter effect when they're meditating. Or they may chase after a jhana, which is they're not necessarily bad things to chase after. Most of the time people chase after Cheetos, they're chased after like cars and these kind of things. And these are chasing the stones that our suffering is throwing at us. Suffering throws this stone at us. We run after it, and we get to the stone, it's already landed. By that time, another stone is getting thrown. So when we go to the source, what it means is that we learn to evaluate what we do and the effects that we get in terms of whether or not it's giving us happiness, the happiness that we're looking for. And to do this well, we can't just look and see whether it gives an immediate hit of pleasure, because that's what Cheetos do. When you get the Cheetos, you feel happy a little bit, but an hour or two later, I think I've told people this story before. They had this, when I was young, they had this Toonie Tuesdays at KFC, and I would go months without eating KFC. And then all of a sudden this craving would start to arise in my mind, like, KFC, that should be really, really tasty. I can't wait. And then the Tuesday would be coming, and I was a young guy, I was a student, so $2 for a full meal of chicken sounds all right. So I'd be building up this craving, and it seemed like the very best thing I could have. And then Toonie Tuesday would come, and I'd go and buy the chicken, and I'd eat it, and I would feel horrible. Like after eating it, it's just like, like my body would just feel terrible. And then months would go by, and I'd start thinking, that chicken might be okay. It's pretty tasty. And so when we chase after the stones, it can be like this. There's actually something in chasing after things that are external to us that give this immediate hit of pleasure that's dependent on their opposite. Because it's dependent on their opposite, when we don't have it, it becomes more attractive. And this is the way that almost anything in the sensual world works. In order for something that we consume with our senses to be palatable to us, to be attractive to us, in general, we can't have it. Or we have to have not had it for a long time. So this is something called the law of diminishing returns, and you know about that in economics. Probably know about it a lot of other places. The more of something you consume, the less pleasurable it gets. And what that means is you've got to chase another stone. Throw another stone, okay, the KFC wasn't good, so what do I need next? Another movie or another whatever it might be. And running this way, a person is always running after stones. It can also be this way in meditation if we're not careful. Okay? These habits can creep into our mind that are unspoken. In terms of what kind of progress have other people had? What experiences have they had? And I want that experience too. There's this innate human tendency to want to rank oneself in whatever situation a human is in. It always comes out that way. Actually, living in Sri Lanka, the ranking systems are really different than in the West. And the West is kind of based on jobs. So, I figure this is going to be based on your job wherever you go. There, it's based on birth to a certain extent. Your family or like where you were born. And that has a huge effect on your job. So, your birth is a big deal there. Okay, you're born a particular family, then that's a good thing. And there's this innate desire to rank oneself vis-a-vis other people. Because people get so much of the reality that they create from other people. So when we come to meditation, especially if we're first starting, then these are things that can creep into the mind and can affect the way that we practice, affect the way that we meditate, such that we hear another person saw a light. Well, I want to see a light too. And if they've seen a light, we haven't seen a light. And we figure that they're a better meditator than we are. But when we go back to the source, learn to behave like a tiger, we learn not to evaluate these things that occur in our life in the same way that people in the world evaluate them. We don't evaluate the KFC by whether or not we perceive it to be tasty. We evaluate it by what kind of effect it gave us when we ate it. We don't evaluate the light, if a light shows up in our meditation, by whether or not it's shown up and whether or not another person has necessarily added value to the light or not. We evaluate it by the effect that it has on our mind, the effect that it has on our world. And this is one of the ways in which we can contemplate our meditation as something that's going to the source of what it is that makes us happy, going to the source of what it is that causes us to suffer. Now, these things are not always as easy to evaluate as one might think. And so it requires a certain amount of sensitivity. And that sensitivity is heightened when the mind becomes quiet. So there's one person I knew, and I know them very well actually, which is why I spent a lot of time helping them, trying to help them in meditation and other things. And they came down with like a really severe, you could call it like depression, something like this. And it wasn't possible, they were getting worse, and because of my relationship with them, I had to help. So after 3 or 4 years, after 1 year, the most severe symptoms that they had fell away. And after 3 or 4 years, most of their symptoms had disappeared. And they weren't on any medication, weren't going to counseling. And even the doctor was like, how did you do that? Go to see the doctor. Usually that's something that lasts for life. As a monk, taking the Buddha's teachings, I could see I was kind of forcing them to meditate. And it had a really good effect on their mind. And then I was arguing with them when they say things that were strange perceptions that were negative about their life and their world. I would argue with it. I wouldn't let it pass and let that become part of my world. I would say, that's wrong, and here's the reason it was wrong. This is just normal Buddhism. The interesting thing about that whole process was that person, although it had the strongest effect on them, could not see it. Could not see what it was that caused this change. People at their work would comment, oh, you're much better, you're doing great. I can't notice anything. How do you not notice anything? They couldn't notice it. And this is part of the reason why people find it difficult to make decisions, to train their minds in such a way that they actually become happy. Oftentimes the things that are truly beneficial for us, again, don't show up like a bag of Cheetos. They start small. And because they start small, one has to be sensitive to notice their growth. It's like planting a little seed. You plant a seed in the ground and you're watering it. Well, it might not shoot up right away. But if you're a skilled farmer, you might see the signs that the seed is growing well and that it's healthy, and what it needs is protection, what it needs is water, it needs sunlight, and it needs care. And if it's given these things, then it will grow into something strong. Now, many of the qualities that exist in our mind that we're trying to cultivate operate on this same principle. They don't show up ready-made. They start small as a potential, and they grow into something large if we nurture them. So this practice that we just did of watching our breath and trying to make the mind stay with the breath, what that actually tends to do is it makes the mind quiet. And when the mind is quiet, it can see these relationships more clearly. So it's really important to know that meditation is not just a technique. What we're learning to do here is something very important. We're learning to see cause and effect and put the causes into place that will make us happy. So everybody, when they meditate, has a different set of characteristics that come into their mind, a different mind essentially. And so the things that come into a person's mind that cause them to suffer, cause them to be happy, will differ from person to person. For some people, it could be that they're getting angry very easily. Other people, it could be that they're very attractive to nice-looking things. And for other people, it could be they're very attracted to members of the opposite sex. That is something that also comes up. There's many different things that people can desire that are external to them that cause them suffering. And the ways in which these things cause people to suffer are very, very different and very, very subtle. I was actually talking to a guy, messaging with a gentleman. When you start kind of talking with people about meditation, it's actually very interesting. It's kind of an interesting life to be among sometimes, because there's all kinds of things that happen to people that are not in the books. I mean, the Buddha mentions them, but he, being the skilled teacher he is, he mentions them as a category very often, because the number of things you can experience underneath a category is just immense. So there's this gentleman I've been messaging with, and he stayed with me for a little bit. And he decided he really wanted to take on a precept regarding celibacy. So I mean, it's pretty hardcore. He's a layman. And recently we were just kind of messaging back and forth. He kind of had this unusual thing happen in his meditation where he was kind of being celibate for a while, then I think he got a girlfriend or something. I don't know. I didn't get all the details. But what's happening in his meditation is that when somebody gets attracted to him or compliments him, he breaks out in this full body sweat and gets this blushing and things. He's like, I never had that happen before. What's going on? Other people, sometimes when they come to meditate, first start meditating, it's actually very common for monks. Everything's going well, very inspired to come and ordain, and they come and ordain, and immediately they come down with severe stomach issues. And then some of them disrobe. When they disrobe, their stomach issues go away. So where's that coming from? What's that about? What this means is that the ways in which the mind can operate that cause a person to suffer can be quite subtle, can be quite unusual. And some of the things, the happinesses and sufferings that a person experiences in their meditation have no name. And what kind of name could I give to the phenomenon that fellow described? There's not a medical name for it. And it's a real phenomenon. It's happening to him. So for us to become skilled meditators, we have to learn to become sensitive to the subtleties that exist in our minds, because the problems that arise in our meditation may be problems. When we talk to all kinds of people, we're the only ones who've experienced it. I'm kind of talking, he asked me, he's like, do you know anybody who's experienced this? I'm like, no. Anybody else? You ever heard of that? No, I've never heard of it. And you've got to ask questions to try to determine what's the cause. Well, if you have a girlfriend for a long time, does it go away? Well, if it does, then it's a sign that maybe it's something to do with novelty. If not, so you kind of investigate in this way. And at the end of the day, this is our own responsibility. So when we learn to behave we learn to meditate in such a way that we can pay attention to these types of subtleties that's when we learn to become more and more skilled in directing the mind in ways that are truly meaningful. Because it's often in these very unusual ways, these ways which a person will not describe, which they won't vocalize, and which they're afraid might sound strange, these are sometimes the most poignant things that cause a person to suffer in their life and in their meditation. Sometimes they're pushed into the background, and sometimes they come up. One doesn't know how to deal with them. So when we have this as our litmus test, what is it that I'm doing that's making me happy? What is it that I'm doing that's causing me to suffer? Then we learn to notice these very small things that we do that have the potential to grow into larger and stronger and more beneficial, say trees, plants, and bear fruit. When we get this sensitivity to cause and effect, then it becomes much easier for us to solve the problems that are causing us to suffer and to grow the things that will make us happy. And this is another way in which we can conceive of our meditation as something which aims at the source rather than aims at the stones that are thrown, and become like a tiger rather than become like a dog. Another important element which is often overlooked, and this is a kind of beginner's class, but still important to talk about it, even if people don't want to take it on right now, is that the mind is an important component. It's the chief, but right underneath that is an enormous lieutenant, and that lieutenant is the body. A person's body is the focus point. It's the locus point of any type of happiness or suffering that they get through the senses. It's based on their body, and the body is often overlooked like this screen in the background. So if we want to cut off the suffering that we have for anything that's external to us, the source of that is the body. Ultimately it's the mind, but the source of it is our attachment to the body. There is no type of external happiness or suffering that is not possible to eliminate by eliminating our attachment to our body. This is something that many people don't want to look at, because in the West, or anywhere, right? I mean, not just the West, kind of everywhere. Anywhere you go, when you ask somebody, generally when you ask somebody, oh, what about so-and-so, this person? I mean, what comes up? An image of their face, an image of their body. I mean, change the body, change the face. It's not the same person to these people, right? Actually, another thing, I was reading this article. Maybe I was listening to something. I can't remember where I heard this anyway. But, it was a book. I think it was a book. And they were talking about this study that they did where they went through a high school yearbook and they selected all the most beautiful people in this high school yearbook. And it was an old yearbook, so they could do this test. And they kind of divided it out. They got a bunch of people to decide who are the most beautiful people. Divided those people out. Then they tracked all these people down. And they tracked down the other people in the yearbook too, and they compared their incomes. And the people who were considered beautiful had a 15% higher income on average. It's called the beauty dividend. So what that means is that living in the world, being attracted to Cheetos, being attracted to KFC, being attracted to cars and houses, there's a huge dividend for taking care of the body to get these things. So it exists in the background. It exists as an unspoken idea of who we are, and it exists as an unspoken good in terms of its utility in giving us what we want. The trouble with all of this is that almost all of our suffering comes from the body in terms of its external things too. When you talk to people who lose their ability to get some external thing, well, all of that has to do with their ability to contact it with their body, to contact it with their eyes or their ears or their nose or their tongue. If they can't contact what they want with their body, then they suffer. So if we want to go to the source in terms of pulling our mind away from what causes it to suffer, we can't overlook our relationship with our body, our attachment to our body, and also some of the strange and unusual delusions that exist around the body. There's something really strange about the body as well, in that when stuff is on the body, it's very attractive to people. And I've got my hair here, it's right there on my head. It's not as much as it used to be, but it's still there. And I've got kind of, teeth in these kind of things. I've got spit in my mouth. If it's inside my mouth, it's not disgusting. If it's outside of my mouth, I don't want to touch it. My hair falls off of my head, and it's on the floor. I sweep it up, and if I pick it, it's like, oh, okay, kind of throwing it to the side. So what's going on there? There's a fundamental delusion there that's hiding some of the truths about what causes us to suffer and causes us to be happy. So when we learn to go to the source for both our body and our mind, when we try to learn to train our mind to be happy, we have to understand that one of the biggest things that we're up against is delusion. When we think about delusion as a lack of information, but actually what delusion is, it's generally our desire not to see. Our desire not to see what it is that truly causes us to suffer, what it is that truly causes us to be happy. Because there's consequences to these things. So as we learn to keep our mind with our breath, just keeping it there in the present moment, when the past and the future fall away, our mind becomes more peaceful. And this is not dependent on KFC. It's not dependent on a car. It's not dependent on a house. And it's not dependent on how much people like us. It's dependent on our ability to stay in the present moment. And so this is a very important skill, because when we have this peace of mind, then we can look at the KFC and see whether we're really fooling ourselves when that craving comes up again a couple months later. Oh, that was pretty tasty. And maybe like another Toonie Tuesday meal. Don't want to see it, don't want to think about the last 5 months. Never mind, it's probably going to be different this time. That was actually kind of the unspoken thing that was probably in the back of my head. Oh, this time might be different, or it's good, I'll just indulge. So that kind of delusion is one of the fundamental things behind what causes us to suffer. So if we want to go to the source, then we have to be prepared to really look at what it is that causes us to suffer and causes us to be happy. And one of the things that sometimes people don't want to see is what really causes us to suffer are things that we like. It's the things that we like that cause us to suffer. It's very hard to see that, and very difficult to see that, like somebody who's in love with their partner, and a good friend comes and says, look, your partner's cheating on you. You don't want to suffer. I mean, money's missing from your bank account, like you're suspicious, all these bad things are happening. Your partner's cheating on you, you should break up with them. No, I love my partner, I'm not breaking up with him. So that person eventually starts to get suspicious and starts to follow their partner around, and eventually is able to confirm that that's the case. And when they do that, then dispassion sets in. And then no matter what happens to their partner, if their partner leaves them, if they come or if they go, they don't suffer because of that. So this is actually ultimately what can cause us to be happy. If we develop dispassion for things, such that whether they rise, such that whether they fall, we remain unaffected. We remain separated. We remain an island unto ourselves. So all of this starts small. It starts small with watching the breath for whoever wants to practice. It starts small with noticing cause and effect. But like a fruit tree, like a tree or a plant that's well watered, that's given sunshine, that's cared for, when it ripens in dispassion. And dispassion, when the mind separates from the things that causes it to suffer, is freedom. It's the freedom that we're looking for. It's the purpose for which we do everything, is to find happiness. This happiness that exists, that nobody can take away from us, that makes us an island unto ourselves, a refuge unto ourselves, that makes us something that suffering can't overwhelm.